Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, May 24th in the year 2022, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. When most people think of Destin, Florida, they think of white sunny beaches, beautiful blue-green water, and half-naked people sunning on those beautiful beaches, and lots of car traffic, especially in summer. What they don't think of is the African continent, but today you will. Our G-list guest today is Sabina Zuguzi. I hope I got it right. Sabina is the founder and CEO of A Gift to Africa, LLC, a company that was established in Salt Lake City, Utah in 2005 and is now based in Florida. The company also has branches in Zimbabwe, Malawi, and soon in Mozambique. A Gift to Africa is a health and wellness enterprise that manufactures and markets natural and wild harvested food and skincare products made with the highest quality ingredients that are sustainably sourced through partnering with women in Africa. We look forward to that conversation. This edition of Tuesdays with Thom is brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Best Girl has been providing customized solutions to executive issues for 34 years. Let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Solution that fits your needs. Okay, so let's get to our roundtable regulars and introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Let's see, Barbara, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Thom. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Let's bring Michael on at the same time because I think some of what we're talk about is going to overlap between the two of you. So yes. We'll bring Michael on. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Thom. Good morning, Barbara. I hope you both are doing well this morning.
Doing well.
Great, thank you.
So we'll start, Barbara, with your happenings this past weekend.
Oh gosh, there were a lot of happenings. I packed a lot into this past weekend, Thom. But I want to first start by saying congratulations to my little great nephew, Kyrie. He's an 8-year-old elementary school student, has been acting or interested in acting since he was born. So he took his first acting class and had his acting showcase on Saturday morning, first thing, and he did an awesome job. So if you know anyone that's looking for a rambunctious, smart 8-year-old to play a part in the movie, he's ready. So congratulations, Kyrie. We're proud of you.
Well, if you go look up, when you're watching a show, and I do this quite often, especially if I'm watching TCM, I'll look up the actors. Excuse me, but if you look up some of the young people or people in their 20s and 30s, you'll find that they started at 4, 5, 6 years old.
Absolutely. Yes.
You get to learn the business, you get to learn what you're doing, and so on and so forth. It's
right.
So he's on a good track.
Yes, he is. I applaud his parents, Jasmine and Cadell Wright, for putting him on the right track. They're support their boys in every way they can. And once they found out he was really serious about it, they got him in an acting class. And like I said, he's just such a natural. He's so good.
Well, good deal. All right.
But after that, Thom, I immediately left and went down to Auburn University, Auburn, Alabama, and celebrated with the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated Sigma Delta chapter, celebrated 50 years on Auburn's campus.
Wow.
And they truly celebrated the 14 charter line members of that organization. And 2 of them are deceased now, but the other 12 all returned. And there were over 100 Omegas who came back to campus for this celebration. And also their their original line sweetheart, Nell Tremmell Bailey, was also there. And it was just
Oh,
a
Nell.
fabulous
Yeah.
weekend. Everyone talked about you, Thom. They were asking about you, and of course mentioned James Owens, and what a phenomenal add you all were to the Auburn University football team, and they appreciate what you all brought to Auburn. And it was, like I said, it was just a truly fabulous weekend. Saturday picnic, a ball on Saturday night, church service on Sunday morning, and just fellowshipping. It was great.
That's good. That's great. Well, yeah, of course I know all those guys. I probably couldn't call all 12 names, but I remember when they went online and when they quote, I think they call it going over,
Right.
something to that effect. But good guys, and and I'll say that this came about because of a quote protest march we had on the president's office at Auburn, President Philpott, who I think was a
Yes.
great guy, a great
Yes.
president. President Philpott, we told President Philpott that that there was no social life for us on Auburn's campus at that time. And he set about to do something about it. And one of the things he did, he went and contacted D.C. Madison, who I think owns a insurance agency in Auburn now. And,
Yes.
and D.C. Hooked it up so that they could bring the Qs to campus.
Yes, DC
And,
was the first advisor to the chapter, but Vernell Barnes, Jimmy Knight, Clifton Kirksey, Washington Carr, Norman Eubanks, Charles Smith, Robert Bernard Bailey, Melvin Little, Jonathan Allen, who's now deceased, George Smith, Harold Drain, Donald Williams, Henry Haha Aldrich, and Jeff Green, who's also deceased. Were
they all there
they were
besides the
all
two
there.
deceased guys?
They were all there, and these guys have gone on to be. They were engineering, majors, and they've gone on to be successful engineers. There was a state representative there. Many of them have their doctorate degrees. They all have become successful. Just like I said, just a phenomenal weekend with these gentlemen.
Well, I think the success was just getting out of there and doing the things that they've done since then. That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
And, I would have liked to have seen them. Good guys. I can probably tell you a little anecdote about Joe Nathan. His name is spelled Jonathan, but he said it was Joe Nathan. So we called him Joe Nathan. Joe was my really good friend. And
right.
it broke my heart when he passed. And Jimmy Knight was Wolfgang. Michael, I don't know if Joe Nathan, Jimmy Knight, they all lived in Auburn. I don't know if you knew any of them or not. You were a little bit behind them.
Yeah, I was behind them.
Yeah. But they lived in Auburn. Joe lived up there by Drake. Wasn't it Drake High School?
Drake High School, yeah.
Yeah. And Wolfgang was Wolfgang. He was interesting.
Well, he is now Doctor.
Well, good for him.
Jimmy
Good
Knight.
for him.
Yes.
Like I said, all the guys were deserving and were hard workers. Vernell, I've had several conversations with Vernell.
Vernell was the first Black to graduate from the School of Architecture at Auburn.
I remember we would kid him because, if you pass by the School of Architecture, 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, the lights were always on.
Yes.
And they were always working. And Vernell was one of those guys. Clifton Kirksey, man, I hadn't seen him, and Bernard.
Right. I mentioned your name and their faces just would light up, TG, Tommy. Nobody called you Thom. Tommy Gossip or TG.
Yeah, that's what they call me. They call me Tommy. So that's great. I'm glad you got to do that. I'm glad. So
yes,
that makes me feel good, and I hope maybe I get to see him next time around.
Absolutely.
So Michael, And you, Barbara said that she met them last week. You told me you had an encounter with Herschel Walker last week.
Yes, I did, Tom. Herschel came down to our state convention in Savannah last week. That's the state convention for the Georgia Association of Health Underwriters. He came by to speak, and I guess you can say, as politicians do, that he came by to shake hands and kiss babies at our convention. It was pretty interesting. And as a matter of fact, when he came in, I did not know that I was going to end up having a role in this, had not planned on it, but a couple things.
Probably were the only other black guy there.
I thought that may figure into the equation, but anyway, I was asked to come in to meet with him prior to him coming out to speak to our convention. And I got an opportunity to talk with him a little bit. And I will have to say this about Herschel. I think he realizes what he doesn't know when it comes to the issues and what's going on in politics. And after all, he is a neophyte. You know, this is his first foray. And usually people do not just jump up and run for Senate when they've never been in politics before. And especially someone with Herschel's background, which has always been sports and other stuff like that. But I would have to say that I found him to have some humility, because a lot of times people that have experienced the success and the notoriety that he has, they somewhat do not have, as I may put it, their ego in check. But with us, he seemed to be that way. He talked about healthcare, and I mentioned a couple facts and speaking points that would benefit him, and his eyes lit up with that. And so did his campaign manager, and they wanted my information, wanted me to share those talking points, because he's going to need it. No doubt about it, Herschel will win the Republican nomination for senator today in Georgia. He's 60 points ahead of his nearest. 60 points ahead. He's got, well,
not six, but 60.
He has 60% of the voters, I should say.
Well,
but
he can avoid a runoff then.
He will avoid a runoff, yes. And most everybody else are down like in the maybe 10 or 12%, somewhere like that. You know,
who are the other people? I haven't even heard of the other people.
Me either. Yeah.
That's the point. They're lesser known people. There's another African American gentleman by the name of Kelvin King, who is a successful construction guy here in Georgia, and he was a Trump supporter as well. He is running, and he also served in the military, but he just doesn't have the name recognition. And unfortunately, Trump did not endorse him. As you all know, Trump endorsed Herschel Walker, but Kelvin King has a business background from a construction standpoint and is fairly known in that sphere. We have another guy by the name of Lathan Sadler. Lathan is interesting. He too, like Herschel, graduated from the University of Georgia, but he went on to Georgia Tech, and he got his master's in international studies and languages, and he learned the language that the Afghan people spoke and served with the White House and the military in infiltrating their camp and developing different type of tactics to kind of get that situation under control. So he's been out there on the field and he's done it. And I think he's a very good candidate. He knows the issues very well. And I would say that if Herschel has a weakness, is maybe his ability to articulate the issues and then at the same time his views on it. But he spoke for about 35, 40 minutes, and it was primarily a little bit about his background and where he came from. He did address the mental health issue that he has. And it was funny when he was talking about it, he says, people like saying, well, Herschel Walker has some issues. And, some people don't like Herschel Walker. He said, now I know I'm talking about myself in the third person, so you guys relax. So that was pretty funny. He was poking fun at himself about that.
You like Ricky Henderson. You remember Ricky Henderson playing with the Oakland A's? Yeah. And they would interview him after the game, and they said, well, Ricky, what about? He said, well, Ricky thinks that's so. Yes.
Herschel did a little bit of that, but he brought it back home. And, he did a lot to poke fun at himself. He said that when he was born, that his family called him Bo, and he looked at me and said, I don't know why, because Bo never beat me in anything, because he knew I went to Auburn, because we had an opportunity to talk before, and he was asking me, where I was from, and I told him that I, grew up in Auburn, and yes, I did go to Auburn. And his first comment was, have you seen Bo? Bo big as hell now. And I just looked at him and laughed, and I said, well, yes, he has put on weight.
Did he give any indication as to why he wanted to run?
He says because he feels like very strongly like the country is on the wrong path, and that we've gotten away from conservatism. He says that he's a conservative, not because somebody told him to be, but because he believes in a strong military, smaller government, and, free capitalism. So those are his reasons.
I've always found it interesting when people describe themselves as a conservative, because the three things you just listed to me are just common sense things.
Absolutely.
I don't know why that makes you a conservative versus makes you a liberal. But I think we have to put labels on people so that the majority of the people will know, okay, he's a conservative, so this is who you need to vote for. I find that interesting.
Yes. Well, it's interesting, Thom, because, from my standpoint, in being around Herschel and watching how the people responded to him, because he's like, he's on the Mount Rushmore of football for University of Georgia. And it's amazing how the people reacted to him. And what I mean by that, and I guess I'm a little bit surprised, because, Thom, you and I, we go down, we hang out with Barkley, we go to the bar, have a drink with him and stuff, and people are always speaking to him, but it's not a situation where people are just lined up. You know what I mean? And when Herschel and I walked down the hall to go into the auditorium for his speech, they saw us coming, and they just came and swooped down with cameras and everything to sign, and we had to just stop. And he wants to sign everybody's autograph. He wants to take pictures and do all that. And they were just lined up down the hall and around and wanting to get there. And I was like a little bit overwhelmed. I'm just not used to seeing people react that way to other people. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was just, kind of, and I was just surprised, to be honest with you, that they were like that.
That's interesting. Well, the good thing, and I always ask this whenever anybody tells me they've met a big presence like Herschel or a famous actor or whatever, and I always say, well, was he nice?
Yes.
And you have told me he was nice, and so that whether I vote, I can't vote for him anyway. So, but it's good to know that they're good people. I think is where I'm coming from.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I was struck most by is, and I could tell he was really appreciative that I was there. And like you said, there's very few brothers in the position that I have within the association. And my colleagues took full note of that and made sure that I met with Herschel, and I was the one to escort him in and kind of manage the whole process. But in order to get him on stage to speak, I had to stop the autograph session and just take over and say, look, we got to stay on schedule. And what I found so funny is that when I spoke to his campaign manager and I said, well, look, if we're going to stay on schedule, we need to stop the photograph and autograph session right now. He looked at me and said, well, you got to stop it. We're not going to be the bad guy. And I sat there and I looked at him. I'm like, well, if you his campaign man, but it struck me then that they didn't want to go tell Herschel, we got to stop.
Right.
That was one thing. Then the other thing, they didn't want the crowd to get mad at them for stopping.
Right.
So,
Well, and what I just said, a lot of times people do this. They have to do autographs. They have to speak to people. And they have their handlers there, and they're giving their handlers the signal to get me out of here.
Right.
I'm tired of this. I need to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a refreshing thing to know that he enjoyed the people, because that's who make you. You know, if he's popular, what did he play 40 years ago? He's popular because of the way he's handled those people and, who acknowledge him and like him.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And, so I had to be the bad guy and stop it, and, but he was okay with that, and he walked in with me. And when he's finished speaking, he said, "Where do you want me?" And I took him back out and we restarted the autograph session and photography. So, but in addition to Herschel here in Georgia, the spotlight is also on the governor's race. And it was an interesting day yesterday because former Vice President Mike Pence came to town to campaign for Brian Kemp. He flew in and met him up in Cobb at the Cobb International Airport there. And at the same time, David Perdue had former President Donald Trump doing a tele-rally or a virtual rally for him. And some interesting things took place. David Perdue realizes that he's not going to win. Brian Kemp is over 30 points higher than David Perdue right now, even with Trump's endorsement. And this is going to be a big signal that just having Trump's endorsement doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win. It may not hurt, but in some cases it does hurt. But in this particular case, they realize that Trump is exercising a vendetta against Brian Kemp for not breaking the law and decertifying the election. That's his whole thing. And David Perdue ran on that. So, it's pretty interesting to see that dynamic shake out. And last week, there was an article that Trump was pulling back and starting to blame David Perdue and say he was an awful candidate.
Well, that's what he does.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he does.
Yes.
But the attention has turned, even though the races for governor is really Kemp against Perdue and Trump, but it's turning out that that's not going to be a race, but everybody's turning their attention to Stacey Abrams. Because Stacey Abrams over the weekend at a Democratic gala here in Gwinnett County, where I live in Norcross, the next city over, she made a statement that she is sick and tired of hearing that Georgia is the best state to do business in the country. And for 10 years straight, Georgia has been voted as the best state to do business in because of taxes and other incentives and their emphasis on small business. Our current governor, Governor Kemp, is a member of the National Federation of Independent Business, which focuses on small businesses and what have you. Well, Stacey said she's sick and tired of hearing that, and that Georgia is the worst state in the country to live. And that got a lot of people ire because they're like, well, wait a minute now. If you think Georgia is the worst state to live, why do you want to be governor? And
you can improve.
Why are you still here and you have 2 houses here? And Georgia has made you a multimillionaire.
Did she not go on to explain why she made that statement?
Yes. She says it's because Georgia is 48th in the country in mental health, and they're low in the country for Medicaid expansion. And she said wages and other things like that. Okay. And that's why she says it's the worst place to live. But that's, when you're running for an office, especially as governor, when you make a statement like that, it's going to come back to haunt you. She did that last time when she was running. She was in South Georgia, and Georgia's a big agricultural state,
right?
With peanut and peaches and all of that. And she made a statement that I become governor, you're not going to have to be a farmer. There are going to be other things for you to do, and you can go do this and this. And some people were offended by that because you have generations of farmers and people that have land that they have lived on. And it's a really big business. For people that really don't know, farmers make a lot of money because they get subsidized by the government. And I think, as she said, we're going to find ways to introduce technology and help you grow your business rather than saying we're going to take you out of it. So they are using that, and they're going to use what she just said, And Thom, you in PR, that when you make a statement like that, rather than saying it's the worst place to live, she probably could have said something like, yes, Georgia is the best place to do business in, but here are the things we need to do. We need to increase access to Medicaid. We need to put together plans for mental health. Okay. But when you start with a negative, that's all they're going to hear.
Yeah. I don't, again, you know how I feel about politics. So I could refute that and just take another side of it, and it would be the same thing. So anyway, I think I'm interested in Herschel. It'll be interesting to see what happens over there. If you don't live in Georgia, you're not getting the ads every day. You're not getting the propaganda every day, and so you don't really follow it that closely. I think it's interesting. I'm glad to see that if Kemp wins, then that means Trump lost, and so that's fine with me. And I'm glad to know that Herschel's a good guy. And so I think it'll be interesting if Herschel wins, which it looks like he will, and he'll be running against Warnock, and that'll be really interesting to have
very interesting.
two black men running for Senate, for the U.S. Senate. So, sometimes we say there has not been improvement, but we can look and see a little bit everywhere that there is improvement. In the country, maybe not in all the areas that we want it to be. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you guys this, because we need to move on. Just quickly, tell me what you think about Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban, and they threw Dion in the mix.
Oh yes, well, and Nick threw Dion in the mix.
Barbara, what is your opinion?
Well, I'll just say this. I think Nick made some mistakes in making those comments, and I think there's a reason for him saying it. But
let me jump in on that right quick for the both of you, and you guys can make a comment. So one of the things I read is that the NFL has become a year-round sport now, with the combine and the draft and all that. And so they're able to generate headlines year round.
Right.
And one of the writers wrote that this was and I don't know if it's an orchestrated attempt. I don't think they use that language, but an attempt to make college football and the NIL more of a year-round sport now. And so you get the two biggest coaches fussing at each other,
right?
And although I think Jimbo was pissed off.
Jimbo was angry, very angry.
And then they throw Dion in there. So you guys' opinions, and we'll move on.
Well, like I said, I don't think Nick should have made those statements. I mean, his general statements, that was fine, but to actually call out Texas A&M and Jackson State, I think were mistakes on his part. I really don't feel like he should have done that. Now, his thoughts about NIL, that's one thing, but don't throw major programs under the bus. The way he
framed it as buying players. Mm-hmm. We've all been familiar with people being accused of buying players.
Yes.
Way before the NIL.
Way before. Absolutely.
So I don't know if that was the right choice of words. I'll just put it that way.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, Nick said Texas A&M bought every one of their players.
Right, every one of them. Like, really?
And that's what really pissed Jimbo off.
And he said, and they didn't buy one.
Right. You bought well. I was going to make a statement myself, but I'm going to keep that.
Hey, we know what Alabama's been doing, and if you ever coached on Nick Saban's staff, you know what went on. So Jimbo's telling everything.
It's exactly what I was going to say. And the thing is, he attacked someone who has coached on his staff before, who knows what he has done. So that was a big mistake on his part. I'm thinking, wow, he might want to rethink that.
When you get to a certain level, you don't think of yourself as untouchable. But sometimes you act as though you're untouchable. Because I remember when that kid, what was his name at Auburn? The one who accused Pat Dye of paying him.
Yes. Eric
Ramsey.
Ramsey, yes.
And they wouldn't deal with him. Right. They just said, get the F out of here. You know, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. That guy ended up losing his job.
Right.
And so I think you can't, you know, you use the word humility, and that's always a good thing to me.
Yes.
You know, when you can humble yourself. And,
yes.
you know, I think he did do some kind of an apology.
Yes.
I don't know what he said to Dion. I thought I said he and Dion were doing the commercials together.
Exactly. I thought they were friends. I thought he and Dibbo were friends. You know,
Dion got pissed off too. Saban tried to call Dion to apologize, and Dion wouldn't accept the phone call.
Dion's like, you made the statement publicly. Don't apologize in private. Apologize publicly.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
Yes.
Well, you know, I think he's a little bit ticked off because Hunter, I think is his last name, that defensive back, which was the #1 player that came out of Gwinnett County that went to Jackson State. And supposedly Auburn had offered Alabama, Georgia, and all of them. And I think part of the issue is that they're starting to see a lot of these blue chip players are starting to go to HBCUs now.
Yes.
And that's threatening to these other power schools.
Well, maybe the power schools will start to look at the social issues of, quote, minorities on majority campuses and how you don't have that life.
Right.
You know, I listen to the guys when we have reunions or whatever. I listen to the guys I went to school with, and I listen to the things they talk about and the things that they did while they were on campus and so on and so forth. And it's like, damn, did we go to the same school? We didn't have that kind of relationship. You know, I couldn't go to the coach's office. I never went to Coach Jordan's house. Had dinner with him. Are you kidding?
Right.
So anyway, let's move on. We need to get to our G-list guests. Good job, guys. Thank you. So let's first of all, we got a minute. Where are you, Sean? Sean's got a minute to school us this morning.
Good morning. My name is Sean Jones, and this is Got a Minute. Hello to everyone joining in with us this morning. I hope everyone is well and in great spirits this week. We're in the last full week of May, so let's make sure we close it out strong as June quickly approaches around the corner. Let's get into it. Here's a fun fact for you. On this day in 1844, inventor Samuel Morse helped develop one of the single wire electrical telegraph systems, which was the first electrical communication system that was in widespread use. Morse wished to be credited as the sole inventor of the telegraph, but there were earlier inventions that were similar in scope to his. A more famous byproduct of the telegraph itself was the Morse code, which was used to encode messages transmitted on the telegraph. This was adopted and used extensively in the decades well after 1874. The U.S. sent the last commercial Morse code transmission in 1999, though the U.S. Air Force still trains 10 people in Morse code per year. Thank you for joining in. My name is Sean Jones, and this is Got a Minute.
Thank you, Sean. We always appreciate those Got a Minute tips. The G list. Hollywood has the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Thom, we have the G list. And so today our G list guest is Sabina Zaguzzi. Sabina, I hope I got it right. I'm working on it. Sabina is the founder and CEO of A Gift to Africa, LLC, a company that was established in Salt Lake City, Utah in 2005. It is now based in Florida. They also have a branch in Zimbabwe, Malawi, and soon in Mozambique. A Gift to Africa is a health and wellness enterprise that manufactures and markets natural and wild harvested food and skincare products. Let's get Miss Sabina on here. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. Start us off by just telling us what your company is and why you did it.
Oh, absolutely. I was just smiling in the background because I've done mental health in Georgia, Mr. Walker.
Okay, good.
And it was quite a challenge, yes. So I am well, I went to school as a statistician and ended up in behavioral health. And I did that in Ohio, in Georgia, in Utah, and then also nationwide and international. But somewhere in between there, I wasn't satisfied with what I was doing. I wanted to do something else, something that would get me up in the morning and I feel like I'm making a difference to the world. So I established actually a Give to Africa after some much reflection, where I'm from Zimbabwe. So every time I would go and visit family, come back, and everyone wanted the stuff that I would bring, and they wanted to see, who made it, how can I support, and all that stuff. And when I was looking for my next step in life, it was just a shoe-in. I just thought this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to help women, not only in Africa, but even women here in the United States. So I started in 2005, as you just said. I started with very high-end handcraft items that I was designing with the women in Africa. And this was in Kenya particularly, and also South Africa. And I would do that, bring them here, and then sell to stores. And then somewhere along the line, this I started in Salt Lake City. Somewhere in between there, I just decided I wanted to do something in the food area because there's so much interest in health, and more so now, with the onset of the pandemic. And there's a lot of stuff that is available in Africa that people don't know about. We here in the United States, most people know more about stuff coming from Asia, from Japan. I mean, we know the matchas. Who doesn't know what a matcha is? We know you can go to Starbucks and we now say names that we've never said before. But that's because of just marketing. And there's a whole lot, I would say 10 times as much, that comes out of Africa that we are not aware of. And the problem being that there's not so much research done on those wild harvested fruits and vegetables, which we actually use medicinally. So that's what I do. I'm based in Destin, and I bring those wild harvested ingredients here, and I make product here in Destin, Florida.
Okay, I'm going to go to Barbara. Barbara, you got questions?
I do. Good morning, Sabina. So glad to have you with us this morning.
Thank you.
I was reading, I think it was a blog that you did, and you talked about a specific plant called I'm going to pronounce it wrong, so you have to, baobab?
That's the American way of saying it.
Okay. Tell us about that and all the benefits, because it sounds wonderful, and I would love for our viewers to hear all about it as well.
Absolutely. So it's in here, people will say baobab just like you did. It's actually baobab.
Okay.
So baobab is a huge big tree. It's found mostly in the southern part of Africa and east coast of Africa and Madagascar. It's huge. It's a big tree that lives for thousands and thousands of years. And what that tree has is a fruit it's hard shelled. It's completely dry inside. And it's got seeds that are covered in dry powder. So it's that dry powder that's so high in vitamin C, in antioxidants, in iron, in calcium, in potassium, and magnesium, and all of that. So what we do is we actually pound on the seeds and then sift, and we end up with the powder. It's lemony. Really nice tasting. You put it in water, it's like you're drinking lemon water.
Wow.
But in Africa, we've always used it medicinally. We use it as a snack. When it's in season, you go to the market, and as kids, as I was growing up, we would go to the market, get this fruit, and then go pound. You find the hardest rock and beat it so you could open it, and we suck on the seeds.
Okay.
And those seeds, they're sour. They've got a sour, lemony taste that is addictive. You keep eating them. So grandma would say, "Hey, don't eat that whole thing." Because the fruit is it's also 50% soluble fiber. It's soluble fiber, which is good for your cholesterol. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm always, talking about the benefits of this fruit, and you can eat it, put it in anything you eat or drink. And it's really great. I really promote it, especially to our women of color, because we're always lacking in iron. It's high in iron. And I always say, this is a natural product. Get a product from somebody who's actually doing it back in Africa. Don't go to Amazon and get it.
Right, right.
Okay.
So you have to tell us how to get it.
Yes.
How can you get it?
Yes. So yeah. So I'm here in Florida. I do markets here just because I want to talk to people. I want to know what people feel about my products. But for anybody who's not here, I'm online. That's my everyday business. It's at agift2africa.com. So it's agift2africa.com. Yes, and you can read the story. A Gift to Africa, obviously, it supports women in Africa. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Michael?
Yes, I wanted to ask you, one is, what are some of the superfoods from Africa that you're sending over? And, here in America, we have a lot of people with high blood pressure. Are there any foods that you guys have there in Africa that are natural that we could use to lower blood pressure to get off of medication?
Absolutely. I would even start with baobab by itself. So with, baobab does a whole lot of things. I can talk even as close as my husband. He has had high blood pressure for as long as I've known him, and we've been married for over 30 years. And he started taking the baobab. So what we also do, what we call the baobab coffee with the seed. After we are done with taking out the powder around the seed, we actually roast it and we grind it just like a coffee bean. And I have this thing called baobab coffee. For those who love coffee, it does not have any caffeine, but it tastes like coffee. So that he just started drinking that, and I'll tell you that his blood pressure medication is reduced to a third for a person who's taken for decades.
Wow.
So the baobab is really good, even if you take it as a powder. There's also moringa. Most people are familiar with moringa because moringa can be grown here in the United States. It's just that moringa is it's a tropical fruit. So with moringa, it's better to take it from a tropical country than we do here. I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking with the one that we have here. So yeah, moringa is a good one. We have other things from Africa that are wild harvested. We have fonio, which is it's like a rice kind of thing seed, which is really wonderful to take. There are plenty of other things like your general fruits and vegetables that, if they are coming from from the original place where these trees are supposed to be, they have more nutrition than the ones that we would transplant.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. How do you spell that bio? The first one.
So it's BAOBAB.
Okay, I got it.
Baobab. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Barbara, Michael.
Sabina, you talked about working with women before. Tell us about it. I read where you've worked with over 300 women in getting products from Africa back here to the U.S. and having items produced here. Tell us a little bit more about that and what has been your biggest success story in working with these women?
Working with women. Yeah, sure. I could talk till the cows come home. Yeah. So, for example, with the baobab project itself, baobab requires people to collect the baobab. The baobab has been there for thousands of years. It's not a tree that we have grown. It's where God put it. So we have people in those communities who collect this fruit and bring it to us. So I have women who collect, women who want to work with me or beside me, or for me, I mean, in all kinds of generations. But so, and then there are women, as I said, I was also doing handcrafts. I still do that. I have women who make all kinds of things with their hands. They knit, they sew, they bead, all of those. And I just don't get what they do on a daily basis. So I kind of, design their products for the US market. Because I sell more to the up market so they can get more money. So it's not a struggle, to sell things that are already found everywhere.
Right.
But and biggest success story, I remember one year when we had a big order from a catalog house, and this was around November. In Southern Africa, around November is planting season. So it meant that the ladies could not go to the fields. They had to fulfill this order because it was a big order. Right. The men did not believe in all of that. Every one of them, their husbands were like after me and saying, hey, now we can't do this. Look, the women are all doing this. But in January, when the money came, it was a celebration. I had women who earned more money than they've ever earned in their whole entire life. Wow. Some were able to build homes or, put children to school because school starts in January. So that for me, I will never forget that. And it happens in small ways here and there where, women who are doing all these wonderful things, or they can do things, they just don't have the conduit. And I would love to have more of our women join me and even go with me to Africa and see what these women are doing and support. Because they're women who are so ready to work, so ready, so hungry for, how can we all do things together? Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sabina, just from a business standpoint and how you set this up, are you utilizing the Office of Import-Export for the U.S. federal government to do that? Did you have to go through there and get licenses and permits to do that?
So I do more import than export. Oops. Hold on. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I cannot see you because something just interrupted my thing here. So I do more of the import and export. So which means, with the import, you don't get much support from the US government as such. But with exports, you do. So with the import export, I mean, the importation part of it, the good thing about importing from Africa is that we don't have too much of taxes that come, especially if it's handcrafts or food that has been certified as safe. So I have not, just before COVID, I was supposed to be joining a group from Chicago. We were all going to Mozambique because I've got a new project coming up in Mozambique. We were all going there as under the MBDA in Chicago to go, and they would help me with the establishing of this new center that I'm doing in Mozambique. But no, I haven't worked with any of the governmental, extensively, no. And most of the time is because they tell me I'm not exporting, I'm importing. So most of their products are for exports.
Okay.
One of the things we talked about before the show came on, it's kind of a pet peeve of my wife, is people consider Africa one country.
That's right. I can hear you. I'm just grabbing something. I can hear you.
Okay. Consider it one country, and they oftentimes, and one language. And we know that it's not. Can you just expound on that a little bit?
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, I hear that all the time, people saying, okay, so this is, generalizing Africa like that. I think people are getting better, though, because, Africa has 54 countries. Africa has thousands of languages. So when I say I'm working in Africa, for myself, I'm in 4 different countries in Africa. So I kind of generalize it instead of saying Mozambique and South Africa and Malawi and Kenya. But all of those areas are so different. And I can allude to the fact that, when I first came here to the United States, this was way back when, when people will always say, oh, okay, so you're from Africa. Do you know somebody who is in Nigeria? I'm from Zimbabwe, which is like twice as long as from here to California. I mean, we have different cultures. We have different, the environment changes even as you cross borders. I used to say, when I first got here, I used to travel a lot, go around the United States. When you go from one state to the other, it's the same thing, same stores, some environments, same everything. So I was kind of, I was disappointed because I would say, I want to go to California. You go to California, there's McDonald's, there's Starbucks, it's still the same thing. So with Africa, it changes. The culture changes, the language changes, the environment changes, everything changes, language changes. So that if you have been to one part of Africa, it doesn't mean anything. If you've been to Kenya, it doesn't mean you've been to Zimbabwe because it's really different. You've been to Ghana, it doesn't mean you've been to Kenya. It's very, very different. So I think, that way as more and more people get aware of the fact that each country is so different, business-wise, language-wise, culture, everything. It's helpful.
Yeah, Sabina, I would like your input on this. I had the opportunity to go to Africa a couple times. I went to sub-Saharan Africa, which is Libreville, Gabon, and also spent some time in Dakar, Senegal. And while I was there, I went out to Gorée Island and had a chance to visit that. So I know you're familiar with Gorée Island. And if you like, you can explain that a little bit to our listeners and viewers. But what I found particularly interesting was when I was in Gabon, I could look out in the sea and you saw all these ships from other countries that are there fishing in the waters off the coast of Gabon and taking it back and then selling it back to the people in Africa. And and there was no ships from the US there, but there was French ships and all over Europe. And from what I understand, they did that because there was no processes in place in order to process the food and what have you. But it's coming from your waters. And they're taking it back, processing it, and then selling it back to Africa. What can be done about that? Can you comment on that?
Sure. And that's just so unfortunate that stuff like that happens. And it happens even with basic food that we have. For example, Kenya has the best coffee, but most of the coffee that you buy from the grocery store has been processed in England, and then it comes back and it's twice as much for the people to buy it, but it's still Kenyan coffee. So there are some strides that have been made in Africa in terms of their regional bodies that have been set up to help industrialize some of those fishing or into agriculture and all of that. So there's more adding value to raw materials, so you can get them locally and produce them locally and then export, so you can get money for the country. I think more and more we see an improvement in that. I mean, there's still so much more room for improvement. And one thing too is that the U.S. is not, when you talk about the U.S. is not very much into Africa. I'm not sure when you went, but the infiltration of China in Africa is also another worrisome thing, because the Chinese have really come into Africa. They've seen that there's a gap and then they come in. The problem being that when they come, they don't employ local people. They bring their own people, even people who have no skills. They will bring from China, which is not a good thing, because if you're investing in somewhere, at least give jobs to the local people. But the US is being beaten by Europe, for example. Europe is in there. There's lots of stuff that's going on. For example, you get some of the European countries who would come in and say, well, can you grow us this crop? And then we'll show you how to grow it and we'll buy it as you grow it, which is a huge, huge advantage for the African farmers, because then your crop has already been bought while you're growing it. Right. And you also are earning export. You also foreign exchange, or for the country. But the U.S. is not. The U.S. is not. It's not is not as participatory as the other parts of the world have been for Africa.
Wow.
Let me,
Yeah.
I want to say Zinguzi stands for
A big tree.
a big tree. Tell us about the big tree.
Yeah, so Zunguze, obviously, I'm married, so it's my husband's name. But Zunguze, in their language, my husband is from Mozambique. In their language, it means a big tree. And a big tree is so much of a significance, just like the baobab tree is, because most of the decisions are made under big trees to provide shade for those who are meeting. That's where our committees, so we say, meet under the shade of a big tree. And the big tree gets to hear all the decisions that are being made over time. So we always say they're full of knowledge and they provide you the shade for you to make the decision.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And you guys got anything else? I want to make sure that a couple of things. One, Joyce says to you that she'll go with you on a trip to work.
Yes.
So you got some help there.
I would love to go too. I volunteer as well.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, yeah. We're just monitoring this COVID thing, So yes. By the end of the year, I got some folks who are like, no, I need to go. You will love it. You will love it, and I promise you would love it. And I've done that with friends over time.
Right.
Come with me because everyone can impart knowledge. Something that nobody else knows, and whatever you can teach those ladies, and those ladies will also teach you what they have nothing, but they have something to teach you.
Yes.
So it's even men can come too. We welcome men to come as well. So I'm working on a project in Mozambique. It's actually a Gift to Africa Center that I'm working on there. It's going to have all kinds of things like processing, training, ecotourism, and agriculture. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And the contact is a gift to the number 2 Africa.com.
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
Absolutely. And let me just mention one thing before we go.
Sure.
So I just came back a few weeks ago, and there are lots of our people who are coming back to Africa to come and buy land and coming to settle. You might not settle 100%, but people are coming because they're feeling more at home in Africa. So if whoever is listening, consider that. And it's not only, I know it started with Ghana, but South Africa, Zimbabwe, down there, anywhere in Africa, people are coming to buy land, and everyone is so welcome. The governments are welcoming people to come and invest their money, and be part of the community, part of who we used to be.
Yes.
I have a question. Back when I went to Africa, and I went there in the early 90s, they were offering dual citizenship.
Yes.
So is that still the place? If you come over and buy land, do you get a dual citizenship?
You can, depending, and it depends on the country, obviously. Most of the countries just depends on the investment you put in. But yes, most of the countries do. I'm a dual citizen, though I'm from Zimbabwe, but I'm a citizen here as well. And it's not difficult at all. And I have friends who have also done that. And as I said, each country has got different laws, but most of the time, most of them might depend on how much you are investing in, just like the US. The US does the same thing. If you invest here a couple million, I think, or $1 million, I'm not sure, you get your residence here immediately.
Couple of million, that sounds like Michael. So
I was gonna say,
there you go.
Look for a check soon.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sabina. That was wonderful. And Joyce and Barbara, I hope you guys can join her and help. And look forward to seeing you.
I would love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. And, anyone who has a question about Africa, I would be happy to help, or products or whatever. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for
going out to your
us.
website. I'll be visiting your website today.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, let me close out my Thank you. Or as I see it. Barbara mentioned earlier that the Qs, the Omegas, were on campus this past week with a 50-year reunion. And she called out the names of the first 12 guys who went over to become Qs. And I knew all of them. We were in school together. And I just like to say to them how proud I am of them. Auburn was not an easy ticket in 1970s. If you were a black student, it was a tough ticket. But what I will say is you never know what will come out of something. We had a march on the president's office. When I say we, it was maybe 10, 12 students had gotten fed up with the way things were. And so we marched to the president's office, President Philpott at the time, and laid down our demands to the president. Actually, it was more of a conversation. But these were things that needed to happen at the university that had not happened. And President Philpott was gracious. He listened. And this was in the spring, I think, of 71. By the fall, within a year, things had improved. People were hired who had previously not been there, black people. The Omegas came on, and every one of those guys, and Barbara, we didn't go through them individually, have been pretty much successful in what they did. She told me about Jimmy Knight. Jimmy, if you're out there, man, I remember you well. And now you're Dr. Knight, Dr. Jimmy Knight. And that's great. George Smith, when we played football, James and I were the only two African Americans on the team. It was very, very difficult to listen to the band play Dixie and the people clap and got all excited over Dixie and the lowering of the Confederate flag at the end of the third quarter and all that. Well, George Smith, who's from Birmingham, I've been knowing George now, I guess we started the same year. George got fed up one day, and at the end of the third quarter, when they went to take the Confederate flag down, it wasn't there because George had already taken it down. And he tells the story that once he took it down, he didn't know what to do, so he ran home. But he also tells that he still has that flag because of the symbolism of what it was. And so I'm proud of those guys. I wish I could have been there. One of my good friends, one of the guys who were deceased was Joe Nathan Allen. Joe and I were the best of friends. And that's part of what happens in college. You make friends for life. And most of these guys I consider friends. So I'm proud of the guys. Maybe next time I can be there, although I'm not a Q, I can be there and shake some hands and do some hugs because it was a special time for us. In some ways, adversity makes you better. Adversity makes you stronger. And we all graduated. We came out of there with degrees. We came out of there with a heads up on what we were going to do with our lives. And so from that standpoint, we are grateful. And we commend the university. And and we move on with our lives. And so hey guys, if any of you are on here, just want you to know I appreciate you and wish I could have been there. And thank you so much. So, and that is how I see it on this 24th of May in the year 2022. And that's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you. We want to thank Michael and Barbara. Thank our G-list guest, Sabina Zenguzzi. I wrote it down. And thank our sponsor, Best Girl. Thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, Sean Jones, the organizer and producer. Remember to enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.